The man suddenly found out that his wife was poisoned in the water while he was drinking tea. At first, he wanted to go to the hospital as soon as possible, but in the next second he suddenly had a stomachache. In order not to let his wife's trick work, the man tried to jump off the building with his stomach covered in pain. It seemed that he wanted his wife to live in guilt for the rest of her life. Although his wife showed regret at this time, the man did not intend to forgive her and jumped off without hesitation. However, when he saw his husband's motionless body, his wife's face showed a strange smile. He rushed into the house without saying a word. He couldn't wait to turn on his husband's computer. He entered the computer password and wanted to transfer all his husband's property. He thought he would be free of worries for the rest of his life. However, he didn't expect that his husband's computer not only needed to boot up the password, but also needed to identify his husband's face. So he hurried back to the balcony again. Seeing that his husband's face had fallen to the ground, Lisa was in deep despair. However, she did not intend to give up because she had a statue friend. In order to successfully open her husband's computer, she found a friend early the next morning and showed a little sadness to her husband's death. Seeing that Arthur seemed to have sympathy for himself, Lisa hoped that he would help her create a model statue of her husband. In this way, she could miss her husband all the time. Facing Lisa's bitter plea, Arthur was embarrassed to refuse. Unexpectedly, a strange noise suddenly came from the second floor, but when he looked around, he didn't find anyone. Unexpectedly, Lisa's words were all eavesdropped by Arthur's friend. When Arthur saw Lisa, he found something was wrong. He thought she didn't look like a good person, but Arthur explained that it didn't matter because Lisa and Arthur had been friends for decades. It's not a big deal to help make a statue model. Then he began to build a statue model overnight. However, what made Arthur feel strange was why the three of them had a deep friendship back then, but now they chose to separate. Seeing that his apprentice wanted to know the truth so much, he had to tell her a story from that year. It turned out that when the three of them were young, they co-founded a film company. At that time, they were shooting a show about mermaids. They tied a rescue device to the actor's wrist and told the actor that if he felt difficult to breathe in the water, he would immediately press the button. But he was a perfectionist. Because he desperately wanted to take the best shot, the actor eventually suffocated in the water. This made him feel deeply guilty. He thought it was all because of him. So he took the initiative to quit the film company and gave it to his two good friends. After hearing this story, the apprentice could only comfort his master. And soon, the statue model was successfully made by his master. He sent the model to Lisa's house. Looking at the one-to-one husband model in front of him, Lisa was excited. She quickly turned on the computer and aimed at the statue of her husband. Unexpectedly, after being identified by a group of people, the computer was actually opened by her. When she saw this, Lisa laughed so hard that she quickly transferred all the assets in her husband's account and deleted the password in her husband's computer. Unexpectedly, this also made the sculptor suspicious of her. Because the boss who was over 100 million jumped off the building and committed suicide, it was unrealistic to say. That night, the sculptor turned on the video 30 years ago. But what surprised him was that there was a terrible truth hidden in the video. He found that the actor was suffocated in the water tank. Lisa deliberately turned off the light next to her. At this moment, the sculptor felt a chill in his back. He didn't expect that the death of the actor had nothing to do with him. It was Lisa who made. Then he came to Lisa's house in a hurry to ask her about what happened 30 years ago. I didn't expect Lisa to admit it as soon as she heard it, but she didn't want that actor to die. She explained that everything was to shoot the most perfect movie, and emphasized that it was just an accident. Then the sculptor opened the door and asked her husband directly if he knew the truth. Faced with this direct heart problem, Lisa's answer was fake. The next second, she began to shift the topic. At this time, the sculptor seemed to know everything, so he angrily threw the tape into the fire. Then he left without looking back. However, when Lisa thought that all the evidence had been destroyed, he suddenly found that the tape seemed to be a little unusual, so he quickly used a stick to pick it out. As expected, he found that the tape had been passive, and the part that turned off the light had also disappeared. Obviously, that part was taken away by the sculptor, but she was not at all panicked, because 10 minutes ago, the sculptor drank his own tea. Now, he's probably dead on the way. As expected, she, who was driving, began to blur for a moment, but in the end, she still managed to get back to the door. When the apprentice saw the master lying on the ground, the master had already lost his breath and completely let go. At this moment, the apprentice of the sculptor noticed something was wrong. I didn't expect that at this time, Lisa came directly to the sculptor's studio. She was going to buy all the sculptures here. She had been arranging people to move things outside, and asked the guys to move all the tapes. Laura thought that the death of the master was likely to be related to Lisa, so she secretly observed in the dark. At this time, she also seemed to realize that the master's tape was likely to threaten her. At this time, Laura suddenly noticed a Medusa shape. There were a lot of tapes on it. She thought that must be the evidence Lisa was looking for, so she decided not to sit and wait. Soon, Lisa moved all the tapes to her house. She burned the fire, because today is the 40th anniversary of the establishment of the company. She wanted to take this opportunity to comfort her husband and friends. At this time, Laura got into a box and got into it. She disguised herself as a black horse. Then she took advantage of the staff's inattention and sneaked out of the car. But her look was too strange. She was soon kicked out of the company by the security guard. In order to get into today's party, Laura had to ask for help from her friends. She used her employee ID to get into the venue. At this time, Lisa was giving a serious speech in front of her partners. Unexpectedly, a video suddenly appeared on the big screen. Turned out that Laura had secretly replaced the tape on the podium. It was the evidence of her killing 30 years ago. At this time, Lisa was in a panic.